Hello everybody, it's time for another still frame review. I've been doing still frame reviews for about 2 months now, and I've gotten 6 under my belt. And 5 of those 6 have so far been Disney properties. And frankly, I've been getting sick of Disney properties. So I thought to myself, what is the most un-Disney movie ever made? And so yeah, that's how we got here. Alright, let's talk about Schindler's List. Released in 1993, this Steven Spielberg directed movie tells the true story of Oskar Schindler, a man of the Nazi Party who starts a factory in the Krakow ghetto in Poland where all the Polish Jews have been forced to live by the Nazis. He employs several Jews, and one in particular, his accountant, Josef Stern, makes sure that all the workers he hires are weak and unskilled folks who would otherwise be sent to the concentration camps. At first, Oskar just wants the cheap labor to make more money, but then, as the ghetto gets liquidated and he sees his workers, including Stern, get sent to the concentration camps and get brutally treated and killed, he starts to care about the Jews. He uses his influence in the SS ranks to save as many lives as possible. When all his workers are about to get sent to the Auschwitz camp, he and Stern create a list of 850 people to come work in his new munitions factory and save them from certain death. That is the titular Schindler's List. Not a very upbeat story, is it? But what's good about it? Well, it's very artful. It won 7 Oscars after all. It's got some fantastic cinematography, music, and editing. I was especially impressed with the editing, even how they used it to tell jokes with no words, within a Holocaust movie of all things. There was also some witty dialogue and great acting and character work. I think a driving element of what makes a good character is their duality. This is exemplified in the character of Oskar, how he's a Nazi, but he's also a Jewish sympathizer. He exploits them for financial gain, but he also saves them from the death camps in the exact same action. And we get to see him in sort of an objective lens, from the outside in. We don't get to understand his internal thought process until the very end of the movie, and so sometimes we're not entirely sure of what his motives are. So those are the good points of the movie, but in determining whether I consider a movie is good or bad, I always give priority to the moral quality over the technical quality, and I found this movie morally lacking. Just to give you a peek into my thought process, I automatically fail a movie if it contains nudity, as I believe the purposeful intake of that is sinful according to Christian doctrine. When I mention that, most people think of the very famous scene in Schindler's List where the Jews are forced to run around undressed in the camp during this medical examination. And there are some interesting and thoughtful conversations to be had about what constitutes a sinful intake of states of undress. After all, this particular scene Spielberg did not present in a sexual manner, so he would not be inciting the sin of lust, or is lust the only reason that is sinful? Or perhaps there's an inherent shamefulness attached with nudity that makes all instances sinful for someone to willingly partake in, unless perhaps they're trying to help a person, like a medical examination or something like that. And I think you can make a strong biblical case from all those different points of view. And there are lots of nuances to this subject that we could go over. However, what most people forget about Schindler's List is that there are also several other scenes in there that are clearly pornographic in nature. So I'm gonna have to give this movie an F on moral grounds. But besides that, the biggest problem with this film is the overall message of the story. It doesn't really have one, at least not that I can pick up. We have to sit through 3 hours of horrendous beatings, tortures, and killings, non-stop suffering, and by the end of it all, it just kind of peters out. I suppose you could say the point of it all was that Oskar saved lives, yes, but on reflecting on what all they've been through, the characters just kind of say, oh, wasn't that sad? And yes, it was sad. Then the movie ends. No message, no inspiration, it's all just pity. And for a film of this magnitude, I think that's a great disservice. When faced with so much human suffering, you really need to bring some insight to make sense of it all. But this movie just asks the question, why would all this suffering happen, and then doesn't answer, just leaves us with a big old shrug. So when it comes to rating it, I already spoiled this, but I'm giving it an F for failure. Despite its technical prowess, the movie fails morally, relying on graphic sex and violence to shock the audience into a state of pity. There's no message of hope, no uplifting insights, only a hollow ringing sadness over the whole film. But Josef, You imaginary person say, it's a Holocaust movie. The Holocaust was tragic. There's nothing hopeful or uplifting about it. What would you expect? That's the only kind of movie you could make with that subject matter. Wrong! You'd be wrong, imaginary friend. You can make a movie with a hopeful message that doesn't rely on shock value. Such a movie exists. In fact, it was the first Holocaust movie I ever saw. I had to have been about 8 years old at the time. What movie was that? Well, tune in next week to find out. Unless, of course, you're watching this more than a week later, in which case, if I remember, I'll put a little white card in the corner that'll fly out and you can click on it and go to the next one. But until next week, this is Joseph Junek signing off. See you later.